Okay, shalom, wonderful lesson ahead. We've got this statement from Deuteronomy: justice, justice you shall pursue. If you listened to the last lesson that I did regarding the whole concept of the festival to be found, within the Talmud, that's called Shavua Haben, the week of the sun, or in other parts of the Talmud it's called Le Yeshua Haben, for Yeshua the Son. Okay, so I talked about that in the last lesson called The Voice of the Millstone. Really interesting stuff. This lesson we're going to be looking at the gematria behind Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, justice, justice you shall pursue, and you'll see that it's incredible. So first of all, I'm just going to have a literally 1 minute refresh at the Talmud that we looked at last lesson to show the significance of the concept of the context of this particular phrase taken from Deuteronomy. Let's go and have a look. So Sanhedrin 32b mentions this week of the sun that in other parts of the Talmud is called for Yeshua the Son. We discussed the whole possible meanings behind what is actually written here and what the sages were hinting at and the significance of what they were hinting at. That happened in last lesson. Now we're going to be breaking down the context. So we've got this Sanhedrin 32b, and it says the sages taught the verse states, justice, justice shall you follow. Okay, if you want to pause and read the rest of that, please do. I talked about this in last lesson, and I really want to get down to the gematria as quickly as possible because it's phenomenal. So it's basically telling you that this statement is telling you to go follow the most prestigious court, as in the best rabbis. We know the best rabbi to actually follow if you are a believer in Yeshua. Listen to him. Okay, so next portion. It then talks about this festival, the week of the sun, the week of the sun. I'm not going to go through any of that in this lesson because I thoroughly covered it in last lesson. Okay, so if you want to pause and read, please do. But I'm just wanting to highlight the fact that this very significant festival that's related to a festival called for Yeshua the Son, and the significance of that was gone over in last lesson, but it's juxtaposed between a repetition basically, and we know how conservative the Talmud is with words, i.e. only the bold is actually written, the rest is commentary or inserted in order to make it possible for us to understand what is actually written. So why has it repeated this and basically said the same thing? You have to follow after the sages. Okay, so there's something in it, bearing in mind that justice, the word tzedek, is related to the sphere of Yesod, which is the foundation, as in the foundation of the world, and that's related to Yosef, and by implication Moshiach ben Yosef. Okay, and we are trying to reveal Moshiach ben Yosef, who Moshiach ben Yosef is. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the gematria behind this word, because we can see the sages are giving us some massive clues where to look. They've repeated it, and they're telling you something very important. They're telling you to follow. This means follow the greatest sages, the greatest teachers. So if we go and have a look at the gematria of this verse, it may reveal something that we've got to pursue, some revelation that we've got to pursue. So as we can see, this whole concept of the week of the sun is juxtaposed, and it's set within the context of this phrase from Deuteronomy, justice, justice you shall follow, and that's related to Yesod, it's related to Yosef, who was called Tzedek, as in Tzedek Tirdof. He was called Tzedek within the Torah, and like I said, that's then related to Moshiach ben Yosef. Let's go and have a look at the gematria. So justice, justice you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you. So that's Yod He Waw He Elohecha Noten Loch, is giving to you. Okay, some wonderful gematria and all that. Let's have a look at some of them, because they really do blow your mind. Right, first of all, we're going to have a look at these two numbers. This is incredible. Now, I've talked a lot about the 5 aspects of Moshiach because when I've been analysing all the messianic things from the Torah that I have done, there's 5 concepts that keep coming up repeatedly that you can see are directly related to different aspects of the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. So basically there's 5 aspects to Moshiach that repeatedly come up, and the numbers of these repeatedly come up when analysing. So those 5 concepts are related to the concept of the 5 strong leaves that surround the 13-petaled rose, which is Knesset Yisrael, the 13-petaled rose. So the 5 strong leaves that surround, also it's like surrounds the cup of salvation or the cup of blessing. This is all spoken about at the beginning of the Zohar. These represent the 5 aspects of the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, and also the 5 levels of soul, the 5 levels of the soul of the Moshiach. Okay, so you've got the concept. I've talked about this loads in my lessons. Moshiach ben Yosef is the tip of the Yod. Moshiach ben Dawid is the body of the Yod. Moshe is the first letter He, the Neshama. Yaakov is the Ruach. And Serach bat Asher would be the Nefesh, the Malkuth, or the final letter He of the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. Okay, it's got a regular. When these are the Mispar Gadols, taking into consideration the final letter Nun and the final letter Peh for Moshiach ben Yosef, and the final letter Nun for Moshiach ben Dawid. Okay, so if you add all these Mispar Gadol numbers up, it comes to 4,045, an order of 364, which by the way is Hasatan, the Satan. Moshiach is absolutely opposite the Satan, the accuser. So this is the force that advocates for humanity as opposed to accuse humanity. 364. If we add them up together, you get 4,409. This is a Mispar Gadol when the names of David and Yaakov are rectified. That means that David includes the letter Yod, which is basically a revelation of the wisdom that is hidden in the darkness that represents Moshiach ben Yosef, the whole concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, the Yod for Yosef, and it's also Chochmah, the Chochmah that was hidden in the darkness. Zohar talks about this. And then Yaakov, in 5 times in the Tanakh, has got an additional letter Vav. 286 times David is spelt with an additional letter Yud. We're going to come across that number later in this slide, actually, I think. And 5 times Yaakov is spelt with an additional Vav. 5 times Eliyahu Hanavi is spelt without a letter Vav in his name. And this represents the truth that is given over to Yaakov, Od Yosef Chai. Yosef is still alive. So if we take the rectified name of David and the rectified name of Yaakov, we get a slightly different number. We get a regular of 4,061 and an ordinal of 380. Add them together, we get 4,441, which is exactly the same as this verse, the regular of this entire verse. So we know that this verse is really talking about the entire concept of Moshiach, that reveals the entire complete unified name of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, the 5 aspects of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, the 5 soul levels of Moshiach, the 5 worlds, 5 books of Torah. There's lots of things that can relate to. Okay, but there's more significant numbers here. If we then add up both the ordinals, both the regulars together here, we get to 8,866, which, as we can see up here, we've got a double relation. We've got the Mispar Gadol, where the names are rectified, is the regular of this entire verse. The Mispar Gadol and the Mispar Gadol ordinal, and that both of these are very significant numbers, by the way. Add them up together, the Mispar Gadol regular and the Mispar Gadol ordinal, it comes to 8,866. So we can see that these this concept of Moshiach, the united concept of Moshiach, the 5 strong leaves that surround the 13 petaled rose, is related to this whole concept of justice, justice you shall pursue. I know of a rabbi that once said to me, when I said we should be looking and searching out for the concept of the Moshiach, he said we're not commanded to. We're simply commanded to have perfect faith in the coming of Moshiach. We're not commanded to go seeking him and looking for him. And I showed him something from Isaiah, seek out the book of Yehudah, which is a code name for Moshiach, by the way. But this is a better one. We are to seek out the Moshiach. We are to seek out a revelation of the Moshiach. We are to pursue it. Tzedek tir Daath. And this we can see is directly related to a revelation and a unity with the concept of Moshiach. Why is this important? Because the Moshiach represents our supernal Daath. Our supernal Daath is what is fallen with the eating of the sin, the eating of the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge has fallen down from its place where it should be in Golgotha, our skull, to our flesh. So we aren't able to know God. We aren't able to have true knowledge of God because this has fallen down. So we can see in some way that when we have a clear and full understanding of the concept of the Moshiach to be found within the Torah, not just our own imaginations, we're going somewhere towards restoring that fallen Daath back up to the place where it actually belongs. And that is somehow related also to the pursuit of justice. Tzedek, righteousness you shall pursue. Okay, so also some very interesting numbers. 136 is the regular of Kiseh David, the throne of David. And it's also here, this number, the 2 regulars together, added up, 8,106, is 21 times 386, and 386 is Yeshua. So Yeshua is something to do with the entire concept of Moshiach. It's through Yeshua really that all the concepts of Moshiach are united. Just as we've got this one verse regarding justice, regarding Yesod, regarding righteousness, unites all the concepts of Moshiach together to restore that Daath to the place it should be. Okay. When it's fallen down into our flesh, it really means that our own imagination has hijacked it to some degree. Our flesh is symbolic, our Esav is symbolic, our evil inclination is all synonymous, symbolic with the capacity that we have to imagine, as opposed to truth. We give truth to Yaakov. You got to empower Yaakov, who represents your soul, with the truth. Okay, and what truth? Oh, Yosef Chai, like I've said before, it's all these concepts that have got to go together. We've got to be very aware of what processes we need, what sorts of revelations we need in order to get us to that desired place, where we're dwelling in the land that's, when we may live and possess the land that Yehudah, your God, is giving us. So lots to consider there. This is a fundamental revelation, the revelation of Yehudah, the revelation of Yeshua being alive. Yosef is still alive. And the power that he has to unite all the concepts of Moshiach together as one. Okay, so we can see that's related and it's wonderful. And we've got this concept, Yeshua Sahapanim. This, I did a teaching about it. This phrase is actually written in the Rosh Hashanah Machzor for the Rosh Hashanah prayers during the blowing of the trumpet. There's a particular prayer that really should be said in order to receive all the atonement that is available on that day, and also the repentance that's required on that day. It includes a prayer that makes mention of this phenomena, Yeshua Sahapanim. It's a very complex phenomena, but it's in the prayer. Why would they include reference to Yeshua Sahapanim, Yeshua Prince of the Faces? because, as I mentioned in last lesson, from about 17 minutes to 27 minutes, in the last lesson that I did, the voice of the millstone, he provides atonement, is the only provision made by Yehudah for atonement to the sin of desecrating the holy name. And I explained that in that lesson from about around the 17th minute up until around the 27th minute. If you wanted to go listen to that, it's absolutely incredible. Okay, so he has to be mentioned, because if he's not mentioned, there is no atonement for desecrating the name of Yehudah. And basically, the sages knew that and recognised that. They recognised that he was the Moshiach way back on Tisha B'Av. They left us coded messages in the Talmud for once we got through the Edomite exile, which we're now suffering, the Roman exile that we're now suffering. And then they also enabled us to go back and have a look at these Talmudic passages and reinterpret them in accordance with the hindsight that we're now in possession of, that helps us to better evaluate the words that the sages said way back then, and all the coded messages that they left us, which we've got to do, because this exile has caused a lot of separation, and now we've got to get to a place where we bring in unity. So we've got to understand, why is everything included in the places where it's included? Why is the mention in the actual Jewish Machzor, the prayer book that is spoken on Rosh Hashanah? You can look this up, Yeshua Sahapanim, you can go Google it. Why is this mention of Yeshua Sahapanim, Yeshua Prince of the Faces, and Eliyahu and Metatron, all massive concepts by the way, in the prayer book? And if you go listen to last week's teaching, he has to be mentioned because there's no provision within rabbinical Judaism for atoning for the sin of desecrating the holy name of Yehudah except through death, an empty dead body. He is a provision. Yeshua was the provision. He was the ram of the Akedah, the ram instead of the binding of its Yitzchak. Again, a coded message. So we have to refer to him in prayers on Rosh Hashanah when it's the day of judgment, and we're repenting for all our sins of that year, and we're making a confession. We've also got to acknowledge the source and the power and the way through which atonement of that particular sin has been provided for by Yehudah himself, and Yeshua Sahapanim is the provision for that sin. It's all very beautiful. But as we can see, again here, if we add up the regular and the Mispar Gadol regular, it comes to 2,702, which is 2 times 1,351, or 7 times 381. And we can see that this is actually 3 times. So these 2 ways in which we can write the 5 aspects of the Moshiach, this is 3 times Yeshua Sahapanim. So we can see that Yeshua Sahapanim is directly related to the entire unified concept of Moshiach, with both the regular spelling of the name of Moshiach and the rectified spellings of the name of Moshiach. They are the different aspects of Moshiach. Okay, very highly significant numbers. And the 153 is highly significant. I've talked about that a lot. Can't go through that in this lesson. And then we've got Dawid Nossi, David will be prince. Okay, so it says, what is the name of the Moshiach? This is one of the statements taken from, there's a lot in there, I'm going to break this down. If we go back to this number 8,886, we can see it's 31 times 286. This is a significant number. 13 times 682 and 11 times 806. Okay, so we're going to look at these 2 numbers. I should have really done that differently. In fact, I think I will. So we've got this then, David will be prince, taken from Ezekiel 34:24. Square ordinal of that is 806. So we can see that that is related to the entire concept of the Moshiach plus this verse. Okay, we've also got this Al Panei Tahom. upon the face of the deep. Going back to this, by the way, it says there's two ways of calling the Moshiach. There's one, he's the prince, and in the Talmud, and I did a teaching on this. It says it's to do with whether the Moshiach is from the living or the dead, and what this is an aspect that's written about in the Talmud, referring to if David is from the dead, i.e. David resurrected, he will be called the prince, and it's taken from this verse in Ecclesiastes 34:24. I'll try and put the link in for that lesson in the description. It's actually very interesting stuff. The distinction between David the Moshiach or David the Prince. Is he coming from, and in both instances he's going to be David. Basically that's the summation of it. When Moshiach comes again, he's going to be David. One way or another, if he's resurrected from the dead or not. If he's not resurrected from the dead, he's still David. But David Moshiach. So Al Panei Tahom, upon the face of the deep. So this is taken from Genesis, and this is talking about the Spirit of God that hovered upon the face of the deep. Okay, and this is, as the sages point out, this is code name for the Spirit of the Moshiach. Okay, that's one of the interpretations. The regular and ordinal add up together to be 806. So we see that there, again, we've got a clear link to the concept of the Moshiach. In both instances, this, okay, from what the sages tell us. And we also know that they're hovering upon the face of the deep in order to extract all the holy sparks that are hidden in the darkness. And that really is a code name for the wisdom that's hidden in that dark place. Going back to that Yud that then goes into the name of David. So David is rectified. And he rode upon a cherub. And as we can see, very incredible gematria with this. 566 is Moshiach ben Yosef, when it's spelt regularly. When it's the regular gematria of Moshiach ben Yosef is 566. And the ordinal of and he rode upon a cherub is 116, which is, again, the ordinal of Moshiach ben Yosef. So together, this is talking about Yosef, basically. He rode upon a cherub. And we know that the cherubim are connected in some way to the concept of Metatron, which is also connected very much to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. It's a very vast system through which Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh is perfecting the entire of creation, so that we will ultimately be able to receive that he desires to bestow upon us, which is a revelation of his absolute oneness. And so this is letting us know that this whole concept of the cherub, that's related to the concept of Metatron to be found within Judaism, is also linked to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef to be found in Christianity. Both of the concepts, the Moshiach ben Yosef found within Christianity and Metatron found within Judaism, are potentially highly heretical concepts. They need to be defested and thoroughly clarified so that they are not contradicting the oneness of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, because there is ultimately only Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, and he is the ultimate only power. He is sovereign. There is no other power except him. And some of the concepts to be found within Christianity compromise that, and some of the concepts to be found within Judaism regarding Metatron compromise the absolute oneness and sovereignty and authority of the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. Ish Sodeh, man of the field, 620, which is Keter, crown. Then 62 is the ordinal, add them together, 682. So we see that's very much, again, related to the concept of and he rode on a cherub. We are out in the field. What field? Well, like Yosef was sent out to the field. He said he was sent out to the field where his brothers were. And this led to an entire sequence of events. The divine providence of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, orchestrated an entire set of events that ultimately would lead to a very great salvation. And this is exactly what's happened with the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. Yosef, as everything has been orchestrated to send him out into the field, he's succumbed, to the forces of the field. What are the forces of the field? Esau. He's a man of the field. He's the hunter. He's even the term sadeh is used in relation to Esau. Field. So he's a man of the field. And yet we have to go out into Esau. We've had to go out into this Edomite, Greco-Roman exile and dominate over that. And also the wisdom that we need to reveal the true full extent of the glory of the name of Yahweh is hidden out there in that field. We've got to draw it out. And sometimes this can actually be related to the whole concept of the sciences. What's called the 7 sciences. And, even scientific knowledge is part of that overall knowledge of God that will be ultimately revealed. The knowledge from above, which comes via the Torah, the knowledge from above, which is part of the authentic knowledge from the sciences, the 7 sciences. And this is also connected to the concept of Esav. Okay, and very much connected to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. So that's got a square ordinal of 1024. That's perhaps linked to something, which is Zot HaTorah. This is the Torah. This is a very, very clear representation of the Torah. It's so clear that you can point to it. Zot. This is the Torah. When we are learning when we are learning out in the field through our own personal experiences of life, we're learning the true wisdom, the true Torah that is to be gleaned from that whole experience, the whole awareness of the way that Yahweh divinely orchestrates all of reality for us to learn wisdom, holy knowledge, holy understanding. That's when we can say this is Torah. It's so clear to us in our mind when we've experienced it for ourselves that there's a clarity to it. You don't doubt anymore. You've overcome the forces of doubt. And part of that whole experience of Moshiach ben Yosef is to overcome the forces of doubt, to know that there's only the Torah, to know that there's only Yahweh, to know that He is the only power, and to find that out for ourselves, not just to read about it in a book, to actually live it, breathe it out in the field of experience called life. Okay, so this is an important part of our evolution and development, and that's leading us to that final redemption. We won't get there in a hurry. It's just been a slow process of building us up and allowing us to experience all that there is to experience in life, and to reach that final conclusion. What final conclusion? There's only Yahweh, nothing else beside Him. And it's going to be that clear to us. And here we can see, if we add the regular and ordinal of this sort, comes to 1112, which is 8 times 139, 8 times Yon Hanavi, and this is the sign of the prophet of Moshiach ben Yosef. Because when Yeshua was asked, what is the sign? Give us a sign. He says, the only sign I'm prepared to give you is the sign of Yonah. To a wicked and adulterous generation is the sign of Yonah. So we can see even this is Torah. It's part of that revelation of Moshiach ben Yosef. The sign of Moshiach ben Yosef. Very interesting again. We've got David. This is David spelt rectified with additional yod that includes the wisdom that we gain from life experienced in the field, just like Yosef sent out to the field. We have been sent out into the field. Yeshua has been sent out into the field. He's been subject to the forces of Esav. But from that experience, we gain a wisdom that we wouldn't have been able to gain if we hadn't been sent into that experience. It's like, why is the Torah given in a place of snakes and scorpions? Because it's only there that we truly understand the truth that's written in the Torah. The truth that's written in the Torah is only fully exposed when you are placed in a situation which brings you to that level of testing and trial, then you know it's the truth. It doesn't become theory anymore, it becomes practice. So we have been field work for the last 2,000 years. We've been out in the field, testing the theories, testing the wisdom that we've inherited through the Torah. David rectified includes that wisdom that we glean as our experience out in the field, or our experience from being given the Torah in the place of scorpions and snakes and battling against all that adversity in order to bring about the revelation of the truth that is hidden in the Torah, that we need to, squeeze out when we're in those hostile environments and hostile situations. So David rectified is in the Tanakh a total of 286 times. So we can see this 286 is connected to all these, and it's connected up here, look. It's connected to this 8,866. Okay. And then here we've got a testimony of Yosef. Okay. Bearing in mind this is Yod He Vav. It's the three letters that begin the name Yod He Vav here. Yod He Vav. A testimony of Yosef. This is Yosef spelt with an additional hair. This filled out comes to an ordinal of 286. So a testimony of Yosef, the true testimony of Yosef, which is a revelation of the name of Yod He Waw He, out with the letter of the Torah. I've talked about this a lot. The 13 attributes of mercy as found in the book of Micah 7, as opposed to the 13 attributes of mercy as revealed to Moshe within the letter of the Torah, within the book of Exodus. So we can see the testimony of Yosef is equivalent to the number of times David is rectified in the entire Tanakh and connected back up to all this. So it's a very powerful statement, this. It's all to do as well with consciousness to a certain degree. Can't really go into that now, but this whole concept of a testimony of Yosef is just to make us more conscious of God. It's very much, the word eduth is related. If you have ha-eduth, for example, the testimony, rather than a testimony, ha-eduth, a testimony, that word spelt backward, todea, is the same word for consciousness. Okay, so our testimony really is validated the more conscious that we become of the knowledge of Yod He Waw He and his absolute sovereignty and oneness. Okay, and of his name, that we are actually conscious and aware of his name, Yod He Waw He. It's a light and a revelation in itself. And we've got to be, even from the lost house of Yosef to a certain degree, we've got to testify to that name in truth, and carry that torch that we've been carrying for 2,000 years, and sometimes we're very quick to just regurgitate the lies that we've been told and bear witness to all the lies that we've been told. We've got to divest ourselves of that and start to speak the truth that we really have had revealed to us. What is the ultimate and absolute truth that we've been had revealed to us? It's the name of Yod He Waw He. That Moshiach ben Yosef has been a revelation of the name of Yod He Waw He to the lost house of Yosef, and we've got to speak about this as opposed to the lies that we have inherited from acquiring that revelation whilst in the depth of exile, and it's come to us via all the sources of exile, i.e. the Holy Roman Catholic Church, which has obscured this message. It's clothed in idol worship to a certain degree. So we've got to divest of our testimony from all the lies we've inherited and just speak the truth, audio sifchai, and understand what that means. We're ultimately speaking about the absolute sovereignty and authority of Yehudah, who has kept him alive and been faithful to the house of Yosef to bring us to that place of promise. Okay, and to safeguard us through this horrendous exile and to usher in final redemption. Okay, all these wonderful things, it's all connected, and to reveal David through us also. It's also connected to the concept of a testimony of Yosef. Without Yosef there is no David. Without the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef there is no concept of Moshiach ben Dawid. Moshiach ben Yosef has got to be united with Moshe in order for them to be a true revelation of David. Which brings us to this, and this is something I spoke about a lot. The desert and its cities shall raise their voice, bearing in mind this is a prophecy regarding the tribe of Kedar, which are Ishmaelites. Not only are they Ishmaelites, but they're supposedly the tribe from which Muhammad came. Okay, and I've spoken about this before. Hidden within Islam is a revelation of the concept of Moshiach ben Dawid. So, this vast faithfulness, if you like, of Yehudah towards the Ishmaelites, the descendants of Abraham, hidden in all that is a revelation of the concept of Moshiach ben Dawid. And I've talked about that a lot. I'm not going to talk about it here, but we can see that the entire concept of Moshiach and the entire concept of this justice you shall pursue is also surprisingly related to the gematria of this particular verse, which is talking about a positive commandment regarding this particular tribe that Muhammad came from, that is a tribe of Ishmael. So the desert and its cities shall raise their voice. Kedar shall be inhabited with villages. The rock dwellers shall exult. From the mountain peaks they shall speak. That's Isaiah 42:11. So we can see that the regular and the Mispah Gadol add up together to be 8,866, which is exactly the same as the entire concept of Moshiach, the 5-petaled rose, the 5 strong leaves that surround the 13-petaled rose, and back connected to this. And I've spoken about this a lot. All the Abrahamic faiths have got to unite together, because you've got the 2 revelations of the name Yehudah, the one in within the letter of the Torah, the one out with the letter of the Torah, the stick of Yehudah, which is the Torah of Moshe, the stick of Yosef, which is the Torah of Moshiach ben Yosef. Unite them together, and they have got to fit into the vessels of Shalom. Who's been preparing the vessels of Shalom? Yishmael, with the religion of peace. Okay, why do we know that they're not connected to Israel? Because they would have the name Yehudah if they were Israel. The Christians have the name Yehudah, the Jews have the name Yehudah. Islam does not possess that name. It is creating a vessel, a holy vessel of Shalom, with which that light, as it says, you'll be a light to the nations. Yishmael represents the nations once they are rectified. Okay. And they're in a process throughout this Edomite exile of being rectified. And there's lots of incredible numbers in and amongst that. We've talked about it a lot. Okay. Let's have a look at more gematria. Right, so we've got this, and Enoch walked with God after he had begotten Methuselah 300 years. Okay, so there's some incredible gematria in there. But this is what we're looking for in this particular lesson. The 4,441 is exactly the same as the regular for this entire verse from Deuteronomy 16:20. Okay, and this part is taken from here, this verse, and Enoch walked with God after he had begotten Methuselah 300 years, and he begot sons and daughters. Okay, so why is that significant? Because in some instances, and it is heavily debated, Enoch is Metatron, and Metatron, according to Moshiach ben Yosef, according to Vilna Gaon, who is an aspect of the light of the Moshiach ben Yosef, is Enoch. So Metatron is this connection between Metatron and Enoch. I can't go over this very, very complicated, highly Kabbalistic concept in this lesson, but one way of putting it is like this. Enoch was a man that became this absolutely incredible divine meta archangel, okay, called Metatron. There was a transformation from Enoch to Metatron. What does that mean in the simplest terms that I could possibly relate it? He became an aspect of Adam's soul called the Yehudah, the aspect of Adam's soul that he had not yet received before he ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So basically this aspect of his soul called the Yehudah, the perfect aspect of his soul, was never blemished by the sin of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it remained perfect. Enoch, through him walking with God, was able to rectify some of this sin of Adam, and his soul then was taken up, and Enoch was no more. He was no longer a man that was subject to the blemish, or he was no longer a soul subject to the blemish and the consequences of eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He managed to transcend that and become part of that upper light that did not get blemished during the fall of all man from the eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So he's what's called the upper light. I think it's Ila'a Za'ara or something like that. I can't remember the actual term, but that's how it's expressed within the Zohar, the upper light. Moshiach ben Yosef is part of that same light. That's why Yeshua was perfect. He was without sin. What does that mean? It means he came from, his entire soul was at that level. He was born at that level. So that's how he's related to the whole concept of Metatron. Enoch his soul became fused with this upper perfect light of the light of Adam, Kadmon, before the fall. And Moshiach ben Yosef's soul is from that aspect of the perfect upper light called the Yehudah. He was the only son. He is the Yehudah, and that's related to the tip of the Yod of the name of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. And I talked about that in last lesson between minutes 17 and 27, and it's absolutely wonderful what I talked about there. So we're getting back to this concept of Metatron, this upper perfect like the Yehudah. By the way, the Yehudah is the level of soul that unites all Israel together. It's the collective soul of all Israel. It's called the Yehudah. When we wake up in the morning and we say the blessings, Moda and Ni, okay, that when we speak that, we are connecting to that level of soul. That's why we don't have to wash our hands or anything like that, because it's part of a perfect level of our soul, an unblemished level of our soul, if you like, the Moda Ani Lefanecha Melech Chai V'Kayam Shechazata Bi Nishbatai Bechemla Rabba Emunatecha. Okay, so that's our soul connecting to that upper light, that unblemished upper light. That's why we're not to wash our hands or anything, even though we've been exposed to sleep, which is 1/60th of death, according to the sages. So we've got even the spirit of death upon us, because we're doing something that's connected to that level of soul that unites all Israel together, and it's part of that perfect light. We don't even have to wash our hands and purify ourselves. It's so powerful. So all these concepts are connected. The concept of Enoch, according to the sages, however, that is disputed. But again, all these things become confused because they've taken this concept of Metatron too far within rabbinical Judaism, or some of the teachings have. Likewise, the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, it's become so vast because it's connected to this it's connected to the Yehudah, which is the highest level of soul, which is one with the name Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. And because it's one with the name Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, it's very difficult to distinguish between a concept called Metatron and Moshiach ben Yosef from the actual concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. From the actual concept of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. because it's at such a high level, it's at the level where the soul of the Moshiach is one with the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, where the vessels and the light are one. There is no separation at that level. So it's very difficult to discern, well, where does the Moshiach end at that level? Where does the Moshiach end, or where does Metatron end? Where does Moshiach ben Yosef end, and where does Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh begin? It's undefinable. We know they're not totally one, or I don't know this completely, but I know that there's a Kabbalist that shared that with me. There is a definite separation, but there's also definitely a unity. It's a little bit of a paradox. It's a little bit above my understanding. One of the ways that I understand it is this, okay? No matter where we are in this world, or no matter how low we go, and we are all subject to very low states of our soul. We all descend into this horrendous exile. Because part of our soul is always connected to that perfect upper light. Even though we're not conscious of it, we've got to create consciousness and awareness of that connection. Even so, we are always completely and totally attached. A level of our soul is always completely one with the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. It's just the fact that we lose consciousness of that. But it doesn't mean to say that attachment is not always present, because it's one aspect of our soul. Even though it's not revealed to us, even though we're not conscious of it, if we know it, we will become more conscious of it. So wherever we are in the world, like I say, to remind us when we say in the morning, Moda Ani Lefanecha, I gratefully thank thee, living and eternal God, for restoring to me in compassion my soul. Great is your faithfulness. That prayer is connected to that upper light, that's connected to Yeshua, that's connected to the whole concept of Metatron found within Judaism. It's one of the same concept, but like I say, it's got dressed up in potentially heretical teachings, and it's very difficult to discern the truth. But that's one of the ways that I look at it. I know Moshiach ben Yosef is not Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, but I also know there's a oneness to Moshiach ben Yosef, and potentially there's a oneness to the whole concept of Metatron, but there's also a oneness with an aspect of my own soul to the name of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh that always exists and can never be broken, and there's a perfection in my soul that's not yet revealed, that never was subject to the fall of man. It was always pristine and perfect. Why? Because it hadn't been received prior to Adam eating of the fruit, so it didn't get contaminated with that sin. So we've got to see it like that, connect to that. What's going to help us to connect to these powerful concepts in a healthy way? Let's go find out. We've got this. The whole unity of the concept of Moshe and Yeshua together. So this is the stick of Yehudah and the stick of Yosef. Got to come together in order to reveal Moshiach ben Dawid. And these are the ordinals, the mispagadol ordinals for the different spellings out of Moshe and Yeshua at the different levels. So this is when the Vav is filled with a Vav and the He is filled with a He. That's at the level of Malkuth. We've got Yetzirah, which the Vav is filled with an Aleph and the He is filled with an Aleph. And we've got Bina, where the Vav is filled with an Aleph and the He is filled with a Yud. And then the highest level, Atziluth, when the Vav is filled with a Yud and the He is filled with a Yud. There's loads of incredible numbers just contained within all those different numbers. But if we add them all together, all the ones for Yeshua, Moshe, come to 418. All the ones for Yeshua come to 568, which is a significant number. We went through that number last lesson, add them together, come to 986. 986 is related to Enoch, and Enoch walked with God after he had begotten Methuselah. So 3,944 is 4 times 986, and we know 986 is connected to a revelation of the unity between Moshe and Yeshua. It's very, very powerful stuff. It's all about unity. Why? Because Yehudah is all about unity, and Enoch is somehow related to that whole concept of the upper light, the Yehudah, as is Metatron and Moshiach ben Yosef. Okay. All beautiful stuff. Excuse me. Right, so let's just have a look at these numbers quite quickly. Actually, tzedek, tzedek, tir, daf, righteousness, righteous you shall pursue, 1072. It's got a misbah gadol of 1946, and it's got filled 2889, which is 3 times 983. So we're going to look at these three numbers. First of all, justice, justice, you shall pursue, filled. Right, maybe I shouldn't have done it in that order then. We're going to actually look at this. So again, this comes back to the whole concept of Moshiach, Adam. So the sages say that Adam is an acronym for Adam, David and Moshiach. So the initial letters of Adam, David and Moshiach spell Adam. Okay, they come to 417. But they've got a misbah gadol of 977 and a misbah gadol ordinal of 95, 95 being Hamelech, the king. Add those two together, it comes to 1072, exactly the same as righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue. So this goes back to the whole concept of we are trying to rectify Adam. We are trying to elevate Adam back up to the status that he had before the fall. Okay, and there's different aspects and ways to understand that. Adam, David and Moshiach. Okay. There's all kinds of stuff there. It's all wonderful, but basically that's connected to this. Also 417, this here is 3 times Yehudah Hanavi. So again we've got that sign of Moshe ben Yosef, Yehudah Hanavi. Son of man. So we know that this is a term. Moshiach, Yeshua, is referred to as the Son of Man. 411, but it's got a misbah gadol, and it's also, that's a significant number. This is Shiloh, the regular and ordinal of Shiloh. So you've got Shiloh, which has got exactly the same gematria as Moshe. It's 345 plus 48 ordinal comes to 363. Okay. I do believe, no, I've got that wrong, sorry, forget that, I'm thinking of 393. So Son of Man, let's go back, let me just start again. Son of Man comes to 411, and we will come across that number again, but it's this number here, the misbah gadol, regular and ordinal come to 1072. Which is exactly the same as righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue, and also connected to the misbah gadol of Adam, David and Moshiach. Okay, that 127, by the way, is a filling out of Yeshua, and I am going to put that up. Where do we get that from? We get that from the ordinal there and the ordinal there. Just wait a minute. Okay, so I've come and included it now, so this is a very interesting number, by the way, because this is again unity between Moshe and Yeshua, which we need in order to reveal Moshiach ben David. So the square ordinal of Moshe comes to 635, which is 5 times 127. Moshe represents that rectified Daath. Remember the eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil caused our supernal Daath to fall into our flesh. So basically our concept of Moshiach is now all imaginary. It's based on our imagination, it's based on our evil inclination, it's based on our body's interpretation of the Moshiach, what our body wants Moshiach to be, as opposed to the revelation of the Moshiach as revealed in the Torah, the true knowledge of God, through the mind of Yoteh, not our own flesh, our own imaginations. So we need to restore this knowledge of God that the Moshiach represents, raise it back up to the place of Golgotha. That's why Yeshua was crucified in Golgotha. It's potentially coded messages, but the spelling out of Yeshua at the highest level of Atziluth, where the Vav is filled with a Yud, also comes to an ordinal of 127. So it's got a connection there between Moshe and Yeshua. And we can see this whole concept of Ben Ish, Son of Man, that's connected to this whole concept of righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue. And then we've got this, it's absolutely wonderful. So we've got this double connection again to the Son of Man and David, who is the 7th. So this is the seventh son of Yishai, Jesse. You can see this in 1 Chronicles 2:15. So it's got an ordinal of 411. So it's got 411 as the ordinal. And it is also got, if we had the square ordinal and the ordinal up of David Hashvi'i, David the seventh, it comes to 1072, which is exactly the same as righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue. He's the ultimate revelation, isn't it? He's the seventh millennium that we're aiming for. You know, that seventh millennium of peace. So we've got to get through the 6 days of hard work to correct us, to do all the work that's necessary to prepare us for that ultimate rest. We're going to 1,000 years of rest under Moshiach ben Daath. Okay, soon may it come. It's going to come anyway. Let's just make sure that we're ready for it. And then we've got this, which is absolutely beautiful, isn't it? We've got this concept of Eitz Yosef, the tree of Yosef, which is the revelation of Moshiach ben Yosef to be found within Christianity. It's ultimately a revelation of the name Yehudah, the much higher levels of mercy. The levels of mercy is revealed at the level of Keter, the Yehudah, the crown. Okay. Some fascinating gematria here. 316 is the same as Yeshu, the name that Yeshua Moshiach ben Yosef is cursed. 82 is the ordinal of Moshiach ben Daath. So together they are a relation also of the tree of Yosef. Okay. And we see that 1946 is exactly the same as the Misbagadol, regular and ordinal, added up, of righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue. Again, we've got this a testimony of Yosef. So we've had this again. We've had this twice now, haven't we? We've got here a filling out of a testimony of Yosef. The regular and the ordinal come to 1966, which is 2 times 983. So we can see that that's connected to the filled out. The filling out of justice, justice you shall pursue. So that's 3 times 983, that's 2 times 983. So there's definitely a connection between the testimony of Yosef, which is basically a revelation of the name Yehudah as revealed through the 13 attributes of mercy to be found in the book of Micah at the level of Keter. I talk about this all the time. And then the grave of Moshe is related also to all these concepts. And I've talked about this even in last lesson. Nobody knows where Moshe is buried because he's buried in his defect. So nobody knows where the grave of Moshe is buried. Why? Because the actual concept of Moshiach is perfect. Just as Yeshua said, I am perfect. Be perfect as I am perfect, and things like this. And it's really Moshe, the concept of Moshiach, which Moshe represents, is perfect. But that perfection is not yet revealed. Okay, where he's truly buried. I've talked about that in previous lessons. He's buried in Jerusalem. But anyway, 983. His perfection will be revealed at the end, and it will be revealed through Gematria. I talk about this a lot. And vessels of fine gold and copper. That's 983. I'm going to pull the verse up. And 20 sprinkling bowls of gold, and 1,000 darics, and 2 vessels of fine gold and copper, precious as gold. And then this word is hamudot kezahov, and there is a slight connection between that and the Mahmed, where we get the whole concept of Moshiach to be found in Song of Songs, the Mahmed. You know, it's one of the terms used as Moshiach, and it's related also to the word Muhammad. So there are connections through the letters. There's connections. I can't go over that too deeply. I hope to do a lesson actually on the word Muhammad from within the book of the Song of Songs soon. It's absolutely wonderful. You know, it's a wonderful verse from Song of Songs. All messianic, of course. Right, and this is the last one. So we're going to be having a look at this 1217, which is the regular and the ordinal of this added up. We've got this concept of the little Yod He Waw He, which is a term used for Metatron. This is part of what I would call, it's understood in some ways heretical. It's heretical, it's opposed to the absolute authority and unity and sovereignty of the name Yod He Waw He. Enoch, Metatron, is actually given the title Little Yod He Waw He. So straight away there's problems with that, and we've got to make sure that we're not misinterpreting that whole concept. However, if you fill out Yod He Waw He with the different fillings out of the name Yod He Waw He for all the different levels, the level of Malkuth, the level of Yetzirah, the level of Asiyah, the level of Yetzirah, the level of Briah, the level of Atziluth. If we take all these and add them up, where do we get to? Just wait a minute, make sure this is right. Alright, we take all the ordinals and add those up. Just wait a minute. Okay, I know where I get it from now. So if we take all the regulars for all these different fillings out, the first filling of Yod He Waw He, the little Yod He Waw He, Yod He Waw He Hakatan, and add it up to the regular of Yod He Waw He Hakatan, as it's normally spelt, it comes to 3,651, which is 3 times 1,217. So we can see this whole concept of Metatron again connected to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. Okay, it's 3 times it. However, we've got another. So this is the Vav, isn't it? This is the Vav of the name Yod He Waw He. The Vav. Let's have a look what the lower He is. What we've got to ultimately connect this to. The Vav and the He have got to be united together. So we've got the concept of the matriarchs, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. And if you take the square ordinals of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel and Leah, add them all up together here, the square ordinals of them all, it comes to 2,434, which is 2 times 1,217. So we can see the connection between the whole concept of Metatron, which is Yosef, which we know through this Tzedek teared off, and we can see this number connects us up to that in some way, quite significantly. But it also connects us to the final letter here. So this is the unity of the Vav and the He together, which is what we're wanting to accomplish. We're wanting to accomplish the unity of the divine male and the divine feminine, heaven and earth. So this represents heaven, this represents earth. This is the letter Vav, this is the letter He. Okay, this is the Zakor, the male, this is the Nukva, the female. This is the the divine masculine, the divine feminine. They must unite, just as the name Yod and just as the letters Yud and He, the first letters of the name Yod He Waw He are always in permanent union together. Okay, so we are trying to accomplish, and there's ways that this is expressed, like the lower waters and the upper waters must unite together as one. There's been a separation. What's called the firmament separates the upper waters and the lower waters. That firmament, in a way, is referred to also as the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, the Yesod in between Tifereth and Malkuth. So really we want to bring Tifereth and Malkuth together as one, and we do that via Yesod. Okay. And then we've also got, this is connected to, this is the dream, isn't it, that Yosef had. This is a very significant verse actually, because in one instant it's referred to as Tzmechot aharehen, growing up after them, and then in another instance it's smechot aharehem in the masculine. This is in the feminine, it's referred to in the masculine. So in two different places it's referred to either feminine in this case or masculine. So this is when it's referred to in the feminine within the Torah, but there is an instant where this that we're growing up after them, smechot aharehen, is referred to as smechot aharehem, masculine plural. But anyway, the 4,868, there's lots of teachings, I've gone over that before. There's lots of wonderful things that in itself reveals, to do with all kinds of things connected to the whole concept of the serpent and things like that. 4,868, which is the Mispar Gadol of this verse, is 4 times 1,217, or 2 times this. So again, we've got this concept of Yosef interpreting this particular dream, and all the divine providence around that, going back to that concept of Yosef being sent out into the field by Yaakov, which represents Tifereth. Tifereth sending Yosef out into the field, and then the whole of divine providence overtaking that situation, taking over the complete story of Yosef and all that he was subject to, and then orchestrating all the events that brought about that ultimate salvation for Yaakov and his sons, and ultimately the exodus from Egypt. But they had to go into Egypt. Why? Because there's wisdom hidden in Egypt. Just as we've had to go into Asaph, because there's wisdom hidden out there in the field that we need. There's knowledge, understanding and wisdom hidden in this dark exile. So Yosef interpreted this dream favourably, and in doing so he was elevated up to the second in command of Pharaoh, the vice regent of Pharaoh, just like Moshiach ben Yosef in a lot of ways is the vice regent of Yotewaweh. Okay, he is a representation of the name Yotewaweh. Okay, and I think with that I will say shalom. Lots to think about, but beautiful gematria. Okay, so shalom. Please subscribe and share.